Welcome to Make It Last, helping you keep your legal ducks in a row and your nest egg secure, with your host, Victor Medina, an estate planning and elder law attorney and certified financial planner.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Make It Last. This is the show that helps you keep your legal ducks in a row and your financial nest egg secure. I'm your host, Victor Medina. I am a practicing estate and elder law attorney and a certified financial planner, which is what they said at the beginning of the show, so why am I repeating it now? Well, it's just a good way to introduce what we've got going on. Listen, I wanted to cover a big subject this week. I wanted to talk about powers of attorney because everybody knows that you're supposed to have one, but not everybody knows that they're not all made the same. So I'm going to go over what you should be looking for in your power of attorney as you try to figure out whether or not that's worth the paper that it's written on. But before we get to that, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about a client's case that I had coming in, and it's just an illustration of a problem that happens a lot with respect to investments. Now, as you often are told in all of the media, the radio announcements, things like that, not all investments are guaranteed. No particular investment's guaranteed. Stocks are volatile. They can go up, they can go down, and there's no real way to know what's going to be happening. And yet, human behavior is such that when we get presented with the next great idea, our mind attaches to that like it's going to absolutely happen, and we rationalize everything about making that kind of a decision. And we hold on to it tightly with both hands, and we decide there's no way that anything can go wrong with it. So I had a client of mine who was absolutely convinced that there was going to be a particular merger that was going to go forward. And this merger had been announced already in the media, and people knew what was going on with that deal. It was under certain government regulation. And the news was reporting that the expected stock price was going to increase by $3 or $4 per share. So my client called me and said, "What do you think about this?" And I said, "I don't invest in specific stocks. It's just not what we do. We believe that markets are efficient, which is to say that over time, the price of any particular stock already factors in all of the information that's knowable. So there's no way to gain an advantage in that. And that the goal of our investing is long-term, and we're thinking down the future. And we don't gamble, that things are going to go up and down." And the client said, "Well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. But I think it's going to go up. Can you buy that for me?" And I said, "Look, you have enough money for you to have fun with this investment." I said, "But I'm not going to allow you to invest more than 1% of it." And not that I had to threaten them at all, but it was the idea that, look, if you're going to put more than 1%, then maybe I'm not the advisor for you. But the client agreed. And we put about 1% into it, and that was back in March. And the news came out, and the news kept coming out, and the stock price continued to drop to the point where it came across my radar again, because I largely forgot about this investment. It wasn't part of what I was managing. And I emailed them, and I said, "Have you looked at the stock price lately? It's not looking good. I don't know what to tell you, but do you want out?" And he said, "Well, let's hold on a little bit longer." I said, "Okay." I said, "As long as you're comfortable that you could lose it all, if you're okay with that, sure, we can hold on a little longer." Fast forward maybe 2 weeks. Loses another half of its value. So I finally got an email saying, "Okay, I've had enough. You were right. Can we get out of it?" Sure, we can get out of it. We can cut our losses and go home, and that'd be fine. We can use those losses to offset some other gains that you might have, and try to get diversified again in some of your other portfolio. Goes too complicated into the situation, but the idea was he had a concentrated position someplace that he needed to diversify over time. I said, "This is a good time to do it." Kind of offset some of those taxes. And we got out. But it was a lesson because the stock that he was investing in was in a business that he knew. This was his business for a lot of years. It wasn't his company, but he knew the business well. And he was certain about what was going to happen and wanted to take a flyer on it. Now, thankfully, he didn't lose a lot of money. At the end of it, it's 0.5% of the entire value of his estate. So, or his investments anyway. And so he's not going to be hurting by doing it. But it's a good illustration of what happens when we try to predict what's going to happen in the stock market. People ask me all the time, what's the stock market going to do? Is it going to go up? Yeah, at some point in time it's going to go up. Was it going to go down? Yeah, at some point in time it's going to go down. Well, what is it going to do tomorrow? I don't know. I don't have the slightest clue. And by the way, neither does anybody else. Anyone else who is pretending to know whether it's going to go up or down is just guessing. And the strength of the confidence that they have in telling you that it's going to go up or down is probably going to get you to feel one way or the other about whether or not you'll believe them. If they're super confident, you might believe that it's going to go up or down or whatever they're telling you. But one place we shouldn't be looking for our news on whether it's going to go up and down or any of the news channels that are the finance news channels where people get paid to say whether or not it goes up and down. And here we have to pause briefly to realize what these financial news channels, the CNBCs of the world and whatever else, what they're there to do. They are not there to inform. It's usually eye-opening. They don't exist to give you information. They exist to sell commercial time. And the way that they sell commercial time is ensuring that there are eyeballs on the screen that they can prove to advertisers. And so the way they do that is to say lots of stuff that will get you to continue to watch. It's why the screen is full of scrolling information on the bottom, as though that's helpful to anything. But it's not. And it's important to realize that no one's going to be able to predict the future, specifically with respect to the stock market. At some point in time, it's going to go down. Sometime later, it'll go back up. And it will continue on this cycle. And I can't tell you which one it's going to be. But I can tell you that it's not going to be good for you to put all of your eggs in one basket thinking one thing is going to happen, whatever that thing is. The best play is always to hedge against the future. Anyway, quick story about a client. Thankfully took my advice, didn't risk too much, and we're moving on from that. But yeah, you should take that advice too. Anyway, when we come back, we're going to talk about powers of attorney, and I'm going to tell you how to determine whether or not you got a good one. So stay tuned. You're on Make It Last, where we help you keep your legal ducks in a row and your financial nest egg secure. We'll be back.
Hey, it's Bert. I hear a lot from people that the one asset they're most interested in protecting from the devastating cost of assisted living or nursing homes is their own home. The team at Medina Law Group can meet with you to discuss options to help protect that home, including their special Home Sweet Home Trust. It's designed specifically to protect the value of your home in the event that you need long-term care in the future. Just call the experienced elder law attorneys at Medina Law Group at 609-818-0068 to learn more, including your chance to schedule a free consultation. You can also visit MedinaLawGroup.com to learn more about protecting your assets and the Medina Law Group team. For peace of mind and a solid foundation, call Medina Law Group at 609-818-0068 or visit MedinaLawGroup.com.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Make It Last. Just talked a little bit about some stock picking. Quick cheat sheet, don't do it. Now we're going to talk about powers of attorney. You definitely need one of these. So let's talk about how to determine whether you got a good one. And first segment, we'll start talking about what a power of attorney is. And then the second segment, third segment for today, anyway, we'll talk about how you can find out whether or not yours is any good. And we'll kind of put all of that together. So, Powers of attorney. Powers of attorney are one of those documents that everybody says that you need. When they tell you that you need the big three in documents, they'll tell you need a will, you need a power of attorney, and you need a healthcare directive or a living will. And they're right. You should need those at basic. It's not a full plan. It's not everything that you're going to need, but you definitely need to start with those. So most people know that you're going to get a power of attorney. And some people believe that a power of attorney is cookie cutter, that one power of attorney is good as another. And so if they just sign something that says power of attorney, then they're all set. And the problem with that is that they don't figure out whether or not they are right until sometime in the future. The time that they figure out whether or not they're right about their power of attorney is when they go to use it. Now, they don't go to use it because they're incapacitated, but their agent goes to use it. And when their agent goes to use it, they figure out very quickly whether or not that document is going to be accepted or rejected. Now, let's talk about first what a power of attorney is. When we talk about a power of attorney, most people think about a financial power of attorney. That is, that document that allows you to manage financial matters for someone else. But that's not the only kind of power of attorney. You can get a power of attorney for health care. You could get a limited power of attorney to conduct business for some transaction. In fact, you often give one. If you've ever bought a home or sold a home, you've signed, in many of those cases, a limited power of attorney to your lawyer to conduct the closing, to just stand in your shoes and then sign a document. So a power of attorney really just is an agency relationship where you're asking somebody to help you do something. And you don't always have to be incapacitated to use a power of attorney. As I illustrated, you can have one for a situation where you're perfectly lucid. Nothing wrong with you. You just don't want to be there. And so you can give a limited power of attorney just to conduct that transaction and move on. It's fine. But when we think about it from an estate planning perspective, the power of attorney that most people are concerned about having is a power of attorney that is there to handle financial matters and will be effective when they are incapacitated. As I mentioned, we don't know when that's going to be. And if you listen to the first segment, my crystal ball is broken. Not only can I not tell what stock's going to go up and down, but I also can't tell when you're going to become incapacitated. So we have to think about making sure that this document has the best chance of working when we need it. And there are tests that you can perform on the power of attorney to try to figure that out. In fact, in the last segment, we'll talk about what they are. But the financial power of attorney is a document that you sign generally when you are full well capacity. You don't do it as you're starting to lose capacity. You do it ahead of time. And you name one person to be in charge. Sometimes you name two people to be in charge. And we're asked, hey, is it okay if I name two people as my agents? The answer is yes. It's totally okay to do that. Where it's not okay to name two people is when we're doing a healthcare directive. When you're going to name somebody to make decisions for you for healthcare, at least according to New Jersey law, you can only name one person at a time. No committees. But for financial matters, it's perfectly fine. You can name more than one person and probably should. Now, you don't have to name them both at the same time, but we ought to have some backups because I don't know when you're going to use this power of attorney. And just as much as I don't know when you're going to use it and what your health condition is going to be like at the time, I don't know what the agent that you've named, what they're going to be like at the time. So it would be good to have a backup. Now, if you're going to name two people to serve at the same time, you've got a decision to make. And that decision is, do you want them to be able to act independently? Or are you going to require them to sign everything? There's no right answer for that. But there are certainly trade-offs. if you require them to sign everything together, you're going to have some checks and balances so that the two people are always working together and they're always agreeing. But if you do that, it might be inconvenient for them down the road. And so you might want them to be able to act independently. Again, no right answer, but you got to choose. There's a little toggle switch on there. The next thing you're going to have to decide is, do you want a power of attorney that's immediately effective? Or do you want one that only becomes effective when you become incapacitated? Again, there's no right answer. There are trade-offs. If you craft a power of attorney that is immediately effective, the good thing is there will be nobody to question whether or not they should accept it. Like, do you meet the conditions that's in there? But the downside is that there's somebody walking around with a blank check to your life. It's immediately effective. They are your agent. No one's going to ask them if you're incapacitated. They're just going to honor the power of attorney. But the other way, which we call a springing power of attorney, that way has the exact mirror opposites of the trade-offs. On the one hand, nobody's walking around with a blank check to your life. That could be a good thing. But on the downside, you've just put up another obstacle to the financial institutions honoring this power of attorney. You've got to prove to them that you're incapacitated. And then there's a long discussion about that test. How do you make that determination? And do they accept the evidence that's in there? Now, granted, I just talked about two elements of the design of a power of attorney that will change from client to client. And so this is a good point to sort of pause and realize that these documents are not cookie cutter. It will not suffice for you to just download one off the internet and then sign it, because it may not work when you need it. And then we just covered two areas. When we come back, I'm going to talk about a couple more. But it's incredible how many people believe that a power of attorney is just a very simple document that they're all the same. They're all the same. Just sign one. No, these are very important documents. And when we come back from the break, I'm going to talk to you about when they fail and how to test whether or not yours will be accepted. All right? So stick with us. This is an important topic. When we come back, we'll talk about powers of attorney and how to determine if they're effective. So we'll be right back after this break. See you soon.
Hey folks, there are more than 500 different ways to claim your Social Security benefits, and most Americans will rely on their IRAs and 401ks to survive retirement. The pressure to make the right decisions at this stage of life can be enormous, as are the consequences for making a wrong decision. Victor Medina, host of Make It Last, is a certified financial planner that specializes in helping people in or nearing retirement. Working with families that have been diligent savers and who value a trusted advisor, Victor is able to put together a customized total protection retirement plan that helps clients answer 4 important questions. Can you afford to retire? Are you overpaying your income taxes? Can your portfolio be improved? Can you eliminate or reduce threats to your retirement? It's never been more important to make sure your ducks are in a row, and it's never been harder to make your nest egg secure. The time to act is now. Call 609-476-9269 or email info@privateclientfamily.com to schedule your no-cost, no-obligation first meeting and get on the road to total protection.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Make It Last. We're talking about powers of attorney. In the last segment, I talked to you a little bit about what's important in drafting one, kind of what powers of attorney are. And in this segment, I'm going to cover the really important stuff, which is how to figure out whether or not yours is any good. So, these powers of attorney, they're not one size fits all. In fact, there's lots of ways that you can draft them that they might cause problems in the future. Now, to understand why they might cause problems in the future, you have to understand a little bit about what financial institutions are thinking about when they look at your power of attorney. So if you have named your son and they take this document and they bring it to Merrill Lynch and they say, I want to manage my father's IRA or tell you to make distributions, Merrill Lynch has got to look at that document and try to figure out whether or not it's effective. And what they're worried about when they're reviewing this is they're worrying about getting sued. Yeah, they don't want to get sued. So they worry about whether or not, if they authorize this distribution, someone else in the family, or you, if you recover competency, is going to sue them for improperly releasing money. So to make that determination, they look at the document and they perform a few tests on the document. One of the tests that they look at is the age of the document. And so these financial institutions will look at the date that it was signed and compare it to an internal policy about how old a power of attorney can be before it is deemed to be too stale to accept. So, of course, they're not just going to go on your document. They're going to have a standardized policy. And that policy might say that anything over 3 years is too old. Or they're going to have a policy that says anything over a year is too old. But there's no standard. There's no law that says that you have to accept one that is younger than a certain period of time. So it's important to understand that when you present this document to a financial institution, they're going to be reviewing it from a liability standpoint. They'll look at the age. That's one test. Another thing that they'll look at is how broad that power of attorney is. They'll look to see how many provisions are in there and whether it covers the circumstance that they're being presented with. Now, I actually had a case on this one. When powers of attorney fail, I guess this is an important topic. I hope I get to it. But when powers of attorney fail, you have to go to get a guardianship. And in that guardianship, you're basically petitioning the court to name you under a court order as the person who's in charge. But when you go through that, the person who's bringing the guardianship, they usually have a lawyer. But you, the incapacitated person, you get your own lawyer. And that's a pro bono gig if you have no money. But it's a paid gig if you've got money, to the lawyer anyway. So I was appointed to represent a guy who had suffered a stroke visiting his dad. And he was only 53 years old. And took him about 6 months to stabilize. But the guardianship was brought by his wife. And there was a time pressure on here because they needed access to this money to pay for their son's second year in Bucknell. And the university was sympathetic that this had happened to his father, but they needed their tuition money if the kid's going to re-enroll. So we were rushing to try to get it done. And the wife was named as the beneficiary on the account. But the guy wasn't dead yet, so that didn't matter. And you might think that in my story, a person doesn't have a power of attorney. But that's also not true. He had a power of attorney. But the power of attorney did not cover, in the provisions that it was written, everything that the gentleman could do in his investment account. What he could do in his investment account was broader than what the power of attorney said. So Merrill Lynch, and this was Merrill Lynch looked at that and said, we're going to deny the power of attorney because it was clear by the terms of the power of attorney that your husband did not want you to be able to manage this account. Because if he wanted you to manage this account, he would have given you all of the powers that are capable of being exercised in here. And so that little mistake ended up costing about $12,000 in fees for guardianship and delaying access to that account by about 4 months. And honestly, I don't know which was worse. So it's important to realize that the power of attorney needs to be as broad as possible with as many provisions, because I don't know what it's going to be used to manage. And therefore, a little 4 or 5 page job is not going to be as effective as what we use in our office, which is a power of attorney that's almost 26 pages. Now, does 26 pages really matter to our clients in terms of, is it impressive? No, not really. It's what we need to sign. But the truth of the matter is that the paper is cheap. Why do we care how long it is? It's just going to get scanned and put on a thumb drive. It's going to sit in a binder. Who cares how long it is? So we're going to make it as broad as possible because we don't know what the weather's going to be like in the future. So we're going to throw some extra sweaters in the suitcase just to make sure that we cover that circumstance. Now, I've given you a couple of clues onto how to test your power of attorney. Look at the age, look at how broad it is, figure out whether or not you've named 1 or 2 agents, and if you've named them to act when together or independently. Look at when it's effective, whether it's immediate or sometime in the future. But the absolute best thing that you can do, is to go field test that power of attorney now while you still have capacity. Because the time to figure out whether or not your power of attorney is any good is while you still have the ability to fix it by signing a new one. And this advice is the same advice that we give our clients with the powers of attorney that we've written. Because I don't know all of the financial institutions that are out there, 500, 1,000 of them. I don't know what they're all going to say. And I've made a promise to our clients that if they come back with a field test and it turns out that that power of attorney was rejected for any reason, we will draft it again for free right there so that they get one that works when we need it, with our thanks to figure out what that particular financial institution was looking for. But it's important to go field test it because if we don't do that, we won't know if it's any good. Oh, and by the way, if you get the answer to the question that says, yes, this is a good power of attorney, the next follow-up question is, how long is that answer good for? Because their policies can change over time. And so look, power of attorney seems like it's a throwaway document in an estate plan, just get one done. But that's often the most crucial document to have because that's where we're kind of rushing around trying to make sure we get our hands and access to money, where the failure to have that one could cost tons of money later, be really expensive and really, really inconvenient. So I would not think of a power of attorney as a layup. You need to get one done, and it needs to be comprehensive. It needs to be a great document in order for it to be effective. And so we'll leave the conversation there for this week on powers of attorney. If you liked this and you'd like to hear more, don't hesitate to send us an email at feedback@makeitlastradio.com. We'd love to hear your show ideas, what you think about what we're talking about now. Incorporate those for the future. Also wanted to thank the production crew that puts this show together. They make us sound great, and that helps us sound more important to you. But anyway, they do great work, and we want to thank them for all of that. Listen, if you like this show, I'd appreciate if you do me a favor, which is I'd like you to share it with a friend. Find somebody that you care about, send them the link to the show, tell them it's on iTunes, tell them to download this episode or any of our prior episodes so that they can get on the same page with the same great information that and then just one more favor, which is to go onto iTunes and leave us a great review. They rank these shows based on how much people like them, and so if you like this show, it will really help it climb the ranks of the best loved podcasts out there on retirement, legal, and financial planning. Anyway, thanks so much for listening to us today. This has been Victor Medina with Make It Last. We help you keep your legal ducks in a row and your financial nest egg secure. We'll catch you next Saturday. Bye-bye.
The foregoing content reflects the opinions of Medina Law Group, LLC and Private Client Capital Group, LLC, and is subject to change at any time without notice. Content provided herein is for informational purposes only and should not be used or construed as investment or legal advice or a recommendation regarding the purchase or sale of any security or to follow any legal strategy. There is no guarantee that the strategies, statements, opinions, or forecasts provided herein will prove to be correct. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. Indices are not available for direct investment. Any investor who attempts to mimic the performance of an index would incur fees and expenses which would reduce returns. All investing involves risk, including the potential for loss of principal. There's no guarantee that any investment plan or strategy will be successful. We recommend that you consult with a professional dedicated to your needs.